Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Who the hell made this Christmas tree? Hey, Alex Simmons, how are you? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chris Ryan. I'm something.
You're a
And that's
hybrid.
Alex Simmons, and he is everything. That's what's going on. And this is
Oh.
Tell the Damn Story. I'm a hybrid writer who has done both independent publishing and traditional publishing. Alex Simmons has traditionally published his ass off, ladies and gents.
His AS off. Yes, right. Thank you very much.
He's written his own stuff with the legendary Blackjack. He's written Batman and Scooby-Doo and Archie. Matter of fact, he
Plays
wrote
and
an
Sherlock
interesting story
Holmes and all
about
that.
your mom.
Yeah.
But
Ooh, here I am.
but
Hey, Chris,
today,
good to see you.
how are
Hello,
you, Alex?
everybody.
Yeah.
And have we got an interesting episode for you tonight, or today,
Yes.
or this afternoon, depending on when
And
you listen
it
to this.
comes with Alex. It comes with a whiff of danger.
Yes. But that's
And
okay.
yet, because we love you so much, ladies and gentlemen out there, we're going to go into that danger.
That's right. But we've got our action figures to keep us safe.
That's
Um,
right.
Here's how, and we talked about this in the green room, because one of these days we got to have a green room. I get my room
It's
is
really
like,
nice.
yeah, right.
It's nice.
But
It's like a bright lime green,
yes,
and it's a little blinding.
yeah. Chris and I were talking, and being writers is a wonderful experience. It's a liberating experience. It's also sometimes a frightful experience, and one that comes with a certain degree of responsibility and a few other emotions that we will get into as we move forward with this episode. But one of the things is we're conscious that right now we're at an interesting time in the United States and the world. We're at an interesting time where there's change. Great change is happening. Some of us are going to be okay with this change. Some of us are going to be uncomfortable with this change. Some of us are living in confusion about really what is going to happen and how do we deal with this. And within that sort of mixed bag of emotions and thoughts and beliefs, there are writers who the material that we present can be amusing and entertaining, can be insightful and thought provoking. And how do we approach our writing style and how do we approach the kind of writing material that we're fond of doing at a time when the changes in our society may make that more challenging, may make that totally impossible, or may make that something that we have to weather some great concern about. How do we still express ourselves? How do we still tackle the material that keeps us alive and excited about
Yeah.
creativity? So
Well,
we're gonna explore this. I'm gonna light the lantern. We're gonna go into the cave and we're going to see what we can find.
and I would say the cliche. I guess we'll start with the cliche and go to the original. Hopefully, writers write because they have to. They don't know how else to make sense of the world, right? This is the process of living for writers, right?
Mhm.
But this is an intense and severe situation. But I'm going to say something really weird. We've been lucky because we had COVID. I told you it was weird.
It's weird.
Okay,
It's
so
very weird. Yeah.
what I mean by that, Alex, is that no one wished for COVID to show up. And we hated it. And we wish it had never, right? All of that. But having gone through that extreme situation for the length of time we went through, we as writers were forced to find ways to cope and to write our way through it.
Mhm.
Now, one of the pieces of advice that so many editors and publishers and stuff, they kept saying, don't write about COVID as COVID because it's going to date the story really quickly and this and that. And the best of writers wrote about COVID in some other way. It was the dissolution of a family. It was some other strain of depression or life-threatening challenge. This was a time where the big monsters became popular again, Godzilla, King Kong, and all that, because we can't control them. We had just gone through a zombie craze, or else that would have jumped up again, because the metaphor with zombies is something completely out of control, right? We're here in a situation. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of vampire stories came back now, because it's a lot of the aspects that we're so upset about feel like blood suckers coming after our whole life in essence and stuff. I'm using that as write the metaphor. Don't write. Nobody wants to read for fun the pain that you're dealing with every day. How do I know this? Ladies and gentlemen, I wrote A Simple Rebellion. Okay, and I wrote that way back in 2016, and I made it as far-fetched as possible so that it was 40 years in the future, and all these over-the-top things happen because we forgot how to talk to each other. Weird experience with that book, because the far-fetched things started to actually happen. And then I took it back off market, wrote it furthering the extremities. And it's going to seem quaint if things keep going the way they're going now. So I'm telling you from experience that writing too close to on the nose, or a metaphor that is reflective of a social situation still happening, you run the risk of reality. Truth is always stranger than fiction, right? But so what you want to do is take some time, whether that means doing the dishes or going for a run or sitting and meditating. But you want to think about, what is it that is giving your heart, your soul, your consciousness, the pain? What is making you so uncomfortable? And boil it down. It can't be so-and-so the politician or so-and-so the business person. There's something else to it. Is it stripping away of rights? Is it the dominating of society? Look at Star Wars. That dealt with both those things, right? Is it feeling powerless? Watch Godzilla -1, right? Or Walking Dead, at least the first 2 seasons of this. And where do you want to go? The universe, or the world as you knew it, turned on its head. Planet of the Apes. Look at the sci-fi, how far you can go to talk about discomfort. And now, Alex Simmons. Hello?
I had my
Yeah.
mic off. I had my mic off because I was listening. See, I was paying attention.
God bless you.
Yes, there you
How
go.
about that, ladies and gentlemen?
I
How
was
about
actually, I was mumbling under my breath. What is
the
he talking about?
generosity of Alex Simmons, who turned on the mute so we could go, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Yeah, right.
I've got to go solo.
Yeah,
But
no, don't worry about it, Louis.
and then next
Fine
week,
now.
only one screen.
Okay, so here we go. There's a couple of things. One of the things that crosses my mind is uh, writers tend to reflect life. Many of us write about the things that we see, we experience, we hear, we feel. And sometimes those stories are all about what's happening to me. Sometimes there's stories about what's happening to other people, but it's still we're still a window on the world. And sometimes it's hard for us to sit down and write about things that we see and that we're feeling, especially if they're painful. But we have that job because sometimes the work is requiring that we write about things that have nothing to do with how we're feeling at that moment, that we have to get past that in order to put bread on the table. And so I feel that one of the things that helped me, and especially going back 20 some odd years, 9/11, when that occurred, I'm still a father, but my offsprings were much, much smaller, much younger. And there was one of them was over in New Jersey, which is across the George Washington Bridge, was over there when that happened. And so the bridges were shut down, so we couldn't get to him and he couldn't get back to us. But luckily we had a friend who picked him up from where he was over there and kept him at their house that night. And so we're sitting here with just the other two children, and we went out for a walk at night in our neighborhood, and it was very quiet and somber. And there was a candy store that was owned by some people who from the Middle East, and they had a very terrifying day because they felt the neighborhood's attitude towards them change. And they're sitting in their store and they're trembling. And we walked in, and as far as we were concerned, you've never done us any harm. You've been a neighbor of ours for over a year. We've come in here to buy candy and ice cream, and so we're going to still treat you as the human beings that we believe you to be, and vice versa, right? So we did that, and then we got back to the house, and the pall, the intense atmosphere of what had just happened barely 24 hours ago was still hovering. Actually, not even 24, 12 hours ago was still hovering over us. And I reached into, I think it was a VHS, no, DVD collections of stuff that I had. And I popped a disc into the DVD player. And the four of us sat and we watched back to back episodes of Get Smart. And for those of you who have no idea what that is, look it up. No, it was an absurd comedy, half-hour comedy show about a bungling secret agent with bizarre, stupid scenarios that were just amusing, funny, crazy, ludicrous, whatever. But good guys versus bad guys. And we watched back-to-back episodes, and we laughed, or we smiled, or as it played, we talked to each other, and it helped us get through the night. And I mention all of that to say that sometimes you have to tap into influences, positive influences, other material that's going to lighten your load,
Yeah.
lighten your being, lighten where your head might be, in order to give you room and space to write the material you have to write.
Right.
If that material has to reflect some of the negativity or the things that you're distressed about, giving yourself a little bit of breathing space will make it easier for you to go and look at that material and then place it in its proper position in your story.
Mm-hmm.
If it has nothing to do with any of that, then it's a distraction. It's something to pull you away from that for this moment. It's a play area that you're allowed to go into and breathe and remember and be more in tune with the kind of material that you have to turn
Right.
out. And
Uh,
I think I'm just going to say in finishing my thought
mhm.
is that quite often we keep taking in negative. We keep hearing negative things, and that does have an impact on us. So you got to give yourself some breathing space from time to time, or else you're just going to go down that rabbit hole and you're going to get stuck
Yeah.
down there.
Um, a sibling of that set of thoughts. Okay. Similar, but a little different. Sometimes we go through something, and in thinking about it and the experience that was the strongest element of it leads us to almost a completely unrelated writing experience.
Hmm.
I'm going to really loosely paraphrase, and I apologize to fans of this writer and the writer himself for all the details I get wrong, but the essence
Okay.
is correct. Brian Keene, a legendary horror writer, came after Stephen King, but has been one of the big names in horror for 20 years, 30 years, something like that. He was, if I remember it correctly, he was in a snowstorm, driving in a snowstorm, so horrible that they sent out troopers and National Guard or something to get people off the road. Like this highway's not safe, bro. You
Mhm.
you got to get out of here. And he was driving to get home to his then wife and very young son. And he wasn't sure how safe they were and if they had everything they needed and all that stuff. So every time one of these people pulled him over and said, look, this highway's not safe. You can't. What he kept thinking was, what would you do? What am I willing to do to get home to make sure my wife and son are? So he would always tell them, all right, the next exit, I'm getting off. I'm gonna find a place to just, hotel or something. And he just lied to them all. And he would go and then keep going and get pulled over and, oh, I'm sorry, I just got on. I'll get back off, and roughed it all the way, being willing to pay any price to get home to his wife and kid, excuse me. And then when he did and everything was safe and he was returning to writing, the visceral energy of that experience, the fear, the concern, the overriding love that would make him do almost the impossible to get to the core of his heart. That was something that he thought, I need to write about this. What's the worst horror that I would have to face down to get to my loved ones? And eventually he wrote a book called The Rising, which was the onset of a zombie invasion. And all he wanted to do, the main character wanted to do, was get home to blah, 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 blah. It was his big break because he had felt that so strongly. But there wasn't a snowflake in that novel, right? There wasn't a highway trooper telling him to get off the road, right? I give that, or I offer that as a kind of an illustration of the map is not the territory. Living the experience that we're living now is not necessarily the most gripping story. One, because most, if not the whole world, is living some version of this. Look at what's going on in so many different countries, right? But what it can lead us to, that doesn't mean we should write 4,000 new zombie movie books. No, but whatever it is, and whatever your experience is, it might not be as big as that. It might be having to go to family Christmas with people you used to politely disagree with and now find as potentially mortal enemies. You can extrapolate from there into Roman times, into the far future. It sounds both like Gladiator and like Star Wars. It is what we can do as writers. And here's a golden or a silver lining for your dark clouds. What we can do as writers is process this pain, this discomfort, this having to navigate the changing world. We can process that into something creative. And then that creativity can nurture, nourish, save the reader, inspire. So many people became Brian Keene fans because that book struck a chord in them, not because, oh, zombies, I like to date one. No, it was about, what would I do to get back to it? Wow. How much am I willing to put on the line for the people who own my heart? And we're going to be, no matter what side of the political football you're on, all of us are going to be assessing and adjusting what we believe, right? Is it okay? Is it the nightmare? Was it what we were promised? Is it not? Whatever your personal experience is, as a writer, processing that can go into the form of a family drama, can go into the form of a detective novel, into a something set in the Revolutionary War times, something set like I did with A Simple Rebellion 40 years into the future. That's up to your creativity. But I think it's that, was it Chinese or Japanese saying, may you live, it's not really a saying, it's a very polite curse. May you live in interesting times.
Yes.
We're there.
Yeah, it could be more interesting, but I'm not asking for that. Yeah.
So I, I think what we have to do as human beings, what we have to do as creatives is live the experience. I'm finding a form of tension, if I could just say this point,
Mhm.
with many people that I are in my world who have decided, no, I'm just going to ignore what's happening. We've seen that show before. It's in the history books. I have tried and I can't do it. I have abandoned some sources of news that have proved to be useless talking heads. I have
Mhm.
no patience for that, but I find that I cannot turn a blind eye to the world. I don't, I don't trust. I grew up around Watergate and Vietnam War, as did you, the War of 1812.
I love you too.
But I grew up in a very cynical time. So I am a very cynical optimist, or I was until recently. And I am trying to find my way through the loss of that optimism. It's just cynicism left now.
I will say
I'm
this about
I find myself in a weird position as a writer for
yeah,
that.
I will say this about that. And again, people are people and we will react or respond according to our own individual nature, let alone whatever our cultural influences are. But I was raised by a single parent and a person who had the devotion of her mother and grandfather and father, stepfather in her life. So she knew she was loved by those two people. But the other folks had wandered away, and so she was raising me on her own, except for that nuclear piece I just mentioned. And I had no siblings, and I grew up in an interesting sort of world of where I was living in an impoverished scenario, but I was going to school with kids who were in middle class and upper middle class lifestyles. And whirling in that is this kid with imagination like nonstop, who was fascinated by comics and movies and television and all of that, and just images and stories and things pouring in there. And one of my favorite images was of heroes or good people coming to the aid of those in distress, protecting the weak, fighting against evil. That was a banquet that I fed on constantly as a child and even into my teens. And yes, the Vietnam War was a part of my life, and I was actually of the age to go. If it hadn't been for my mother's illness at that time, I would have been drafted and sent over.
Well,
There was
to
a
the
lot,
age,
behave. And so
almost too old.
it's a situation of there's a lot of reasons around me that could have played to feed a negative response in me, and
Mhm.
feeding on that negativity I could have come out a different person, but I came out the person that I am. And one of the things that I fully believe in is, yes, you should have hope and you should have a certain amount of faith in the possibility of good happening. But that doesn't mean be lazy about it. That doesn't mean wait for the handout. It means take responsibility for helping to create the world you want to live in. And subsequently, if I don't believe in a better world, then I should just give up and drop here, which I'm not going to do. If I don't
True.
believe in the possibility of a better world, then boy, did I screw over my offsprings. And subsequently, I have a responsibility to them to try and make a difference because I did bring them into the world, and that is what I should do. So, as a writer, going back to the
Right.
theme of the show, I have to also remember that not only do I have some hope and some belief and some desire to fight for the right, but also I want to
I
help.
mean, the right cause, not the
Yeah,
political right.
yeah, right, exactly. See, I wasn't even going to go there, but okay. The reality is, I also want to help support and inspire others to feel the
Right.
same way, to kick apathy to the curb, so that we are taking responsibility for what's happening and trying to make it better and trying to look after those who can't at this moment influence that, but make it better for them who are coming up behind us. And so, as a writer, yeah, I think that sometimes I'm going to look to other writers and other forms of entertainment and information to inspire me and to keep me seeing the possibilities. And at other times, I'm going to be responsible for putting that material out there. And that material may be purely entertainment, or it may be making a statement about something that I feel that needs to be said in order to possibly push against the negative.
Yes. And if I gave you the impression that I am finding that I can't write, that is not what I
Oh,
meant
that was
because,
what I
yeah,
said was not a reaction.
okay. My number one beta reader is Glorious, of course.
Wonderful woman that she is. Yes.
And I just finished edits and rewrites on a collection, we'll say that. And she turned around having shockingly read it all in one sitting. She turned around and said, I think this might be some of the best stuff you've ever written. And she didn't need to say that. But so I'm not at a loss to be creative. But for example, A Simple Rebellion, for all its harrowing darkness, ends on semi-cynical note of hope. What I found in writing this current project, which just got sent out today, fingers crossed, the hope is more subtle. Despite all the advantages of the dark character in the piece, the good in the piece, those who would seek justice, met their goals. What happened afterwards is something to be read and to be, we'll see if people embrace it or not. But let's just say that my pie is no longer in the sky. But that's legit too. There's such noir crime stories are not uh generally uplifting.
They're not
Uh
cozy mysteries.
no, S.A. Cosby does brilliant work. Never gonna be mistaken for Chitty Bang.
No,
No, it's just, and there's room for those stories too.
absolutely.
Um, and we'll see. But there's a way to be renewed by this and to
Yeah.
feel I have a new avenue to explore. But it shouldn't be shotgunning your frustrations and the new Darth Vader wears face makeup. That's no,
Wait a
it's
minute,
not
that
good.
might work. That might work. No,
But
I would say again, because this is probably what one might call the last episode of 2024, not the last episode, but the last episode of 2024.
yeah,
I would like to go into 2025 with the definitive statement that here we go, because there have been hard times before and hard times during, and there will be hard times again. There will be moments of elation and joy, and there will be moments of sorrow. I think how we deal with those things and how we as writers reflect those things will be determined by the kind of people that we are. And I think if I have anything to offer as a thought for 2025, it's that it's something that my mother used to say, they can knock us down, but as long as we keep getting up, we've got a shot. And so I would like to think of the fact that I'm going to keep getting up. I would like everybody else out there who may be looking at this as a difficult time to do the same and to push forward and to try and push forward with some positivity because that's what we need. And
I
I
think
think
you're
we're all
right.
capable of that, one way or the other.
And I would quote my mom, who famously said, "Bonnie, who's in the toilet?" There you go. And that's a quote I live by, ladies and gents.
Oh, gee.
What I mean by that is life is going to continue,
Yeah.
right? How we react to it, how we have, as creatives, have been programmed to react to it is in creative ways.
Hmm.
So I would advise each of us to keep these things close to your heart. Number one, you know who you are. Don't lose that. And old cliche that Cassine will laugh at, our old friend Cassine Gaines, trust the process.
Mm.
You have been creative. You will continue to be creative. Just find the most creative ways you can to say what it is that you need to say, and trust that if it's coming out of your heart and your mind, the way that you have been raised as a creative, there will be someone else on the other end that needs to read that story, hear that song, watch that film, see that performance, because it is as it has always been. Creatives help guide the way through the dark to the light.
I love that. That's really great. I will only add, because I feel I must, that we are also, as creatives, allowed to fill ourselves with the fuel, the joy, the inspiration, the light that we
Yeah.
need in order to be able to move forward.
Amen to that, brother.
And on that note, sir, Ollie, what would you like people to do?
I'd like them very much to have some pie. But before that,
Yes.
please hit and subscribe, Stanley.
Oh. It's been that kind of a holiday season for us.
Yeah, we've been like this kind of since the Thanksgiving episode.
Yeah. And Laurel and Hardy, you live on in our hearts.
Yes.
Everybody, you have a good one. Thank you, Chris. As always, a joy.
Have a great holiday season, whatever that's going to mean. And we'll be here on the other side.
Yes, we will. Take care, everybody.
Peace to you all. Love you, brother.
Love you too.